Well, slap-de-dap, my G's. How are you guys doing? I've got a great video for you today. This one's going to be another classic. I only drop classics. You guys know this already, but this is just one of those again, you know. But basically, I had a great lesson with one of my students today, whose name I don't need to tell you, but he's from Australia. He's a legend. I love him. He's got a great sound that we're working on together. And he asks so many great questions in the lessons, and it really makes me have to explain things. And I was explaining something to him earlier, and I was like, I've never talked about this on YouTube before. Maybe this will help some other people. So what we were talking about was how to really look at span, look at the frequency content of a track, and how to sort of what should it look like? What should a good track look like? You know, and obviously every track's different. Nothing's going to be perfect. Blah, 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 blah. But there's something that I noticed that I do when I'm looking at span, which I wanted to show you how I look at the analyzer. Why? Right. So we're going to be looking at 4 of my older tracks, which are unreleased and not very good. Actually, I say not very good. I really love these tracks. Like, there's 4 of my favourite tracks because I wrote them all while I was at uni, and 3 of them I featured on my final project that I did at Brighton University, and I love them very much. It's just that it was when I was more of a beginner at producing, and I hadn't quite mastered the mixdown yet. There's a lot of mistakes in the mixdowns in all these tracks. But that's kind of where I was back then, you know. But now I'll re-look at them on Span and think, you know, what's good about the track and what's bad about it, you know. So this first one is called Cosmos. This was like a sort of half-timey kind of thing. And so what I was talking to my student about was looking at where to look on Span, what you're looking for, you know. And typically we were talking about, you know, if you're looking at peaks, you know, sometimes, if I just mute this, sometimes if you're dealing with really weird sounds that have really spiky peaks, it might be in the mid-range, might be something like this. You know, that's often usual when you've got, like, you know, certain sounds that have that sort of, they have a sound which is quite resonant, you know, like guitar strings, they often come up with quite high peaks in the mid-range. You know, and so that's one thing, to look at peaks, and you can look at peaks and go crazy about peaks. Oh, that peak's way too high. Bring that down. Easy stuff, beginner stuff, you know. But what I actually personally look at on Span the most is the lower level of resistance, I call it. So if any of you guys ever have traded or have invested or looked at any chart for Bitcoin or crypto or the S&P 500 or whatever, if you guys are into investing, whatever. You know a little bit about the bottom line of resistance, that basically when you've got an asset that it's going on a sort of upward trajectory, like Bitcoin, for example, it has these high peaks and then it goes down again. But what I always look at is the sort of low average of where it gets always to the bottom. And if you sort of look at that bottom line, so imagine this is sort of like a Bitcoin chart or something. Let's say you start looking from around here, like the bottom sort of line where the sort of bottom of the content is, and you just sort of make an image in your head of like where that bottom line is of all of the content, you know. So I don't really look at the peaks. I sort of just look at, you know, that lower level of resistance always, you know. And so that's how I sort of look at an EQ. I'm looking at that always. And so when you look at that, you can sort of start to see the shape of the whole spectrum, you know. And then, what you can do then is you can sort of see, you know, where things are generally like more out of whack, out of balance, you know. So this track, let's have a look. Let's have another listen to it. What I noticed on this one is I've got a big chunky gap here on 200 or 300 hertz. That's just something a little bit more, that feels like that area is missing like a bit more than I would like, you know. So that's something I probably could have done way better. I probably could have given the bass some extra harmonics here to fill out that range a bit more. It feels like it's missing a lot. There it comes in, you know, this sort of guitar that's in the track comes in. That's really filling out this space here. That's what you want, you know. But yeah, in this part of the track here where that guitar's not in there, I probably could have filled out that area with a bit more, because it just kind of feels a bit like out of balance. Yeah, the high end is kind of a bit, it's not, nothing's crazily out of balance, but it is a little bit. You see it sort of goes up a bit here, then comes down a bit there, then kind of goes back up again. But it's like quite a subtle sort of snake. It's not very, how can I say, it's not like extremely out of balance, you know? I look here, there's sort of a bit of an area here, sort of between 2 and 4K, where that could be a good area to bring things up a bit, you see. Just sort of level this area out a bit more, you know. And again, I'm not looking for a perfect flat perfection. I'm just looking for just general bit of balancing always, you know. So that's something I could do on that one maybe. Let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at Fusion. I love this track. It's got a really sort of jazzy, bluesy kind of vibe to it, especially the intro here. I love this part. But anyway, let's have a look at the drop. You see how this one looks much more filled out than the last one? It's a bit more of a maximal drum and bass tune, so it's got a lot more content in general. The previous one, Cosmos, was a lot of one-shots and Foley things, so it wasn't anywhere near as full. You see this one, it's got quite a nice balance actually. Again, like it's kind of, you don't really feel like you're sort of really lacking anywhere, except for actually in the real low sort of sub area. I reckon that could have a bit more push, that sort of real low fundamental of the sub. I probably could have brought that up a bit. I like things in this sort of 30 to 36 range, but it's very much at the low end of that range and dips quite below it often. I'd probably look at actually bringing the sub up on that tune a bit more, to be fair, if I had to do it again. So let's have a look at that. Obviously EQing the lows up, you know, on the master like that with channel EQ is not very good thing to do. But I'm just sort of showing you as an example, you know. But that's the sort of main thing that I would probably give a bit extra on that. The rest of the spectrum looks pretty nice actually. Always though, remember guys, it's always about your ears really. You can ignore the spectrum completely if you can just trust your ears, you know. So this is just for like practicing purposes, you know. Let's take a look at Massacre. This is a great tune. I really love this one. I'd never released it. I didn't even submit this at uni. This was just a project that I was working on like while I was at uni, just at home, and I never did anything with it. I just sort of I just put it on my Patreon a while ago. But I love this tune. I still love the vibe of it. Like it's kind of really badly mixed. The drums are like kind of all transienty and clashing with each other, and it just has this kind of I just really like it. I just remember writing it and it being one of the first tunes that I was just in love with. Like, I just sort of leveled up a bit when I wrote this one from being complete noob before, right? But yeah, if we look at here, the content again, it doesn't look too bad, does it? You're kind of leaning up a bit. You're kind of sloping up quite a lot here. you kind of got quite a bit of a gap, sort of all the way from 400 up to 2K. Seems a little bit out of balance here compared to the highs, you know. So it's a bit high end heavy, this one, and again, real lack of sub bass in this track again. I was probably producing on way different equipment back then. I think I had some old Sennheiser headphones. But yeah, this guy looks a bit out of balance as well. He could definitely use a bit of, yeah, sticking around sort of 2K. And also, yeah, that kind of sub again. Still a bit better, still a bit out of balance, especially so that 800 area as well could use a fair bit. It's a bit nicer. Ideally, you're going to be doing this in your project on the sounds that want the push in that area. You're not going to be doing it on your master. Hopefully, you'll do all that in your Mixdown in your composition. You know, so especially doing that in your composition already. That's the best thing. You know. But yeah, that's sort of where I should have probably improved that one a bit better. Let's take a look at the last one. My absolute favorite. This was my masterpiece, my final project. A side, the A track. Fusion and Cosmos were kind of like the B sides to this one. This was like, I put the most time in this one. I put months into this. I built this intro out of like loads of Foley stuff, spinning a bicycle wheel in my uni halls, like recording some sort of spraying sounds. I did all these Foley things for no reason. No, it is cool. Built this whole cinematic intro. And it had this whole like tension build up kind of thing. Then went into this drop with these really like overly synthetic drums. I just love the bass arrangement on it though. Again, it looks pretty nice, very, very nice and full. Nothing really lacking, except maybe this area here. Obviously, things are changing there, but going back to the sort of main section on the drop, yeah, this sort of section here. Where are we in the track? Let's me play it again. Let me unmute this. Yeah, it's almost this 300 to 1K. Area seems to be quite a bit of a dip there compared to all this high-end stuff going on, you know. So that's obviously an area. Really, the mid-range kind of could probably have used a bit more in that song. To be fair, let's put another. So yeah, particularly sort of around that 400 area. There you go. Looks a little bit more fuller now, a little bit less weak in that region. But yeah, that's basically, you know, a couple of tweaks that I could have done on these sort of older tracks of mine. But yeah, really just looking again at Span and just talking about it. Yeah, it's essentially, you know, you can kind of. These tracks are quite nice and full anyway, but like with Cosmos, for example, you're dealing with these sort of tracks that have lots of peaks and not such a consistent sort of fullness to them. It's better if you can get that consistent fullness in your track, like not like this one. But yeah, what you can look at often is that sort of lower line of resistance of where the sort of the low parts always are, and then you can sort of use that to sort of gauge the shape. And then you can see like where things are really out of balance, you know. I'm not talking about exactly like, oh, the sub should be here, the kick should be here, the snare should be here, the hats should be here. I'm not telling you exactly about, you know, all the levels where they all need to be. I'm talking about how you can use it as just as a guide to sort of check the overall balance and just sort of check, like, it's not like you have to really think like everything has to be flat, everything's got to be this way, everything's got to be that way. It's just you sort of using your intuition and feeling like, you know, okay, like there's sort of a big balance difference in this. Like this area seems like really there's a lot missing, and like, you know, maybe over here like you have these really high bits, but then the sort of other part of the treble like doesn't really do that. So I'm quite a bit tinny with this kind of vibe, you know. So it's just about sort of looking where those discrepancies are, where those imbalances lie, and just thinking, like taking that one step further and then thinking like, okay, you've got these sort of imbalances, you know, what does that mean? You know, what's causing that? Is that good to have that there? Like, is that good to have that imbalance? Oftentimes you'll find smoothing things out a bit more in your favor to be a little bit flatter in certain, you know, areas, like balancing things out where there's, you know, major differences. You'll often find that gives you a bit of a fuller, more coherent, cohesive kind of sound, you know. So that's just how I like to look at span, and I use it just as a reference, as a guide. I don't depend on it. I depend on my ears at the end of the day, but I can use it to sort of check the overall, you know, where the imbalances lie, you know. So that's the best way to use it, in my opinion. All right, thank you very much for watching, my G's. I hope you liked that video. Make sure you like and subscribe if you're new. Leave a comment down below, and yeah, check out the other links. I do one-on-one classes. I've got mixing and mastering services available via email. I've got a bunch of presets on my website. New Vital Pack is up as well. Plus, I've got a great community over on Patreon in my Discord as well, as where all the action it really is if you want to get into it. So thank you very much. More from me very soon. Much love.